Carl, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. First time we've done an interview together, I think. I'm talking about the CEO of Wells Fargo. His name's Charlie Scharf. You may have seen him on Mad Money. You did that with Jim a while back. Charlie, nice to have you here.
Great to be here.
At the Milken Institute. You know, I'd love to get started in the same place I did with Mark Rowan a few moments ago. Sort of your view of the macro and what you're seeing right now. Things seem to be changing almost on a daily basis in terms of at least investors' views. How do you see things right now in terms of uncertainty, in terms of whether things have ground to a so-called halt, which is something that actually Mr. Rowan referred to as sort of occurring right now when it comes to allocations of capital?
Yeah, I would definitely separate what the markets are telling you and what we're hearing from our clients versus what they're actually doing, because you see two very different things. There's no question that people are concerned. There's no question that businesses are concerned, and they're trying to think through how they have to react to what the end game can be in the tariffs. But at the same time, what you see is, from our standpoint, our customers, whether they're consumers or businesses, in terms of their actions, they're very, very consistent. So when we look at spend levels in our card business and our debit card business, there's very little change overall. Now, they're reallocating what they're spending on. There's no doubt that some are pre-buying, but that's just, they're buying more goods and they're spending less on restaurants and travel and things like that. But the overall health of the consumer overall is still very strong. And when we look at the companies we do business with, the underlying facts are still strong because it hasn't filtered through.
Right. Well, I guess that becomes the question now. When are things going to start to filter through? Do you have an answer?
Well, I think it depends on what the outcome of the tariff negotiations are. If they come out in a way that's favorable, then you could wind up with a really, really good scenario for the economy. It'll take some period of time to get through this uncertainty. But if the numbers are significant and affect how companies do business, then you will see a reduced level of investment. You'll see certainly people stop hiring and possibly some downsizing. You'll see a more significant recession.
Yeah.
So Chamber of Commerce for all the outcomes. I mean, because
it's impossible.
We're in this unknown period.
It's almost impossible. There does seem to be a hope, at least, that there is going to be some sort of a deal with a number of countries, or at least the possibility of a deal that will be announced, and then maybe China to follow. Small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, we continue to hear Chamber of Commerce last week was talking about this, saying that they could get hit particularly hard. Do you agree?
For the most part, yes. I mean, I did a dinner here on Thursday night with some of our middle market customers, and all of them in one way, shape, or form, all but one, have some degree of reliance on imports from other countries. But at the same time, it was quite interesting because here in California, and I feel like it was much more of a balanced point of view. Concern, but there's also a point of view that they ultimately could wind up in a better place if the trade negotiations bring about real change in the trade environment.
Yeah. So what is it you would like to see in the trade negotiations then, or what do you believe would be best for your clientele across the board, from both consumers, obviously, to
Listen, we're a very simple company, being so focused on the U.S. So what's best for the U.S. is best for Wells Fargo. And so if we wind up in a scenario where you've got some tariffs which equalize the playing field across the world, which create some degree of revenue, but don't change behavior negatively in any material way, and we get resolution, particularly with our allies, and that opens up the ability for our companies here to export more to other countries. Doesn't mean there's got to be trade balance in every country. I mean, that's a whole different story. But just a more level playing field for us to compete is a really good thing for our customer base. And that ultimately will filter through from businesses down to the consumer.
Right. Is time of the essence here? I mean, we are starting to see at the Port of L.A., for example, ships are not showing up at quite the same frequency, or if they are, they're half empty.
Time does matter, and I think, importantly, people want to see progress. They want to see that we can get to a resolution on some of these things, so that companies and individuals don't have to start making behavioral decisions, which get hard to reverse. So as I said, when we talk to these middle market companies, and we get a report every day that lists all of the conversations we've had with all of our commercial banking clients.
Yeah.
And again, people aren't taking meaningful action yet, but they're putting plans in place and they're ready to do so if they have to. So what you want is people to be in a position to be prepared, not have to do that, and reap the benefits ultimately.
The meaningful action being cuts, I would assume, in expenses and changes of that nature.
Absolutely.
What are you doing in terms of preparing Wells Fargo for, let's say, the worst?
It's first of all, we always plan for different environments, and one of the things in the banking business is you never know what's going to happen, so you've got to be prepared for downside. So we're doing a whole bunch of scenarios, but I would say most importantly is we've been running the company very conservatively going into this environment. We had trimmed our, we had on the edges started to be very careful with our consumer lending practices, and we were in a conversation of when are we going to start loosening up some of those things that we had done. So we've stopped doing that. We're looking at all of the asset classes with which we lend to, but it's not stopping us from doing the things that we do. We've got to be there through good times and bad. We generally focus on higher quality companies or companies that we know very well, and that's going to continue, whether they're smaller companies or larger companies.
Yeah.